First speaker. This is Francesca Rolandi. She obtained her PhD in Slavic Studies at the University of Turin in 2012. She was a postdoctoral fellow at the Italian Institute for Historical Studies in Naples and the University of Rijeka. Her research interests range from social and cultural history of the post-Yugoslav and Upper Adriatic area to the history of migration and refugees in the 20th century. She works on Irene project, and the title of her paper that she's going to present today is Workers' Activism, Gender Issues and Political Rights in Times of Transition, the Case of the Fiume, Rijeka Tobacco Factory after the Great War.
Hello everybody, can you hear me? Yes. Okay, I'm very happy to be part of this panel entirely devoted to tobacco workers. We really have room for comparison. In this paper I will talk about tobacco workers in Fiume, Rijeka and Croatia, and I will focus on the transitional years following the First World War. I will investigate how the turbulent political events which unfolded in the city affected workers' everyday life. I will investigate different political options at stake and how the mechanisms of inclusion and exclusions were implemented. So, the tobacco factory in Fiume was founded in the mid-19th century, and on the eve of the Great War, it employed up to over 2,000 workers. Tobacco workers were very present in the local popular culture. For example, many popular songs, canzonette fiumane, depicted tabacchine as women empowered by paid labor, and women free to take decisions in their private lives. Before the Great War, tobacco workers fought to improve their working conditions, to increase their salaries. They took part in several strikes, but there is no evidence of the fact that they massively joined the strong and reformist Fiumean Socialist Party. In the aftermath of the conflict, when the economy of the city was stuck, workers' bargaining power reached its minimum, and as noted by Dominique Ryle, the persistence of the imperial framework is proved by the fact that in December 1918, some tobacco workers submitted a request to the Italian National Council for an improvement in their salaries, and they did so drawing on the increase that tobacco workers had received in Hungary. The Italian National Council had taken control of the city in November 1918 and immediately took control of the tobacco factory because it was a strategic factory. As these tobacco workers stressed in a sentence, which might sound insolent, after voicing their support for the Fiumean cause, they wrote, "Our sympathetic joy with the city is huge, but it could grow bigger should the Italian National Council take into account our requests." So their, we could call it braveness, probably derived from the changes that the war brought about in gender relations. In fact, as they themselves stressed, many of them had become the main breadwinners in the family, as some of the other factories in Fiume had ceased working, and many of their husbands were unemployed. Soon, the project of national engineering on behalf of the Italian National Council entangled with the political will to preserve the scarce resources available in the city. In August 1919, some Yugoslav women were allegedly dismissed from the tobacco factory. The Italian National Council motivated this measure with the need of granting work to Fiumean workers. In fact, the dismissed women, who in some cases had worked in the factory for many years, were regarded as foreigners because they were living and held pertinenza. Pertinenza is Heimatrecht, a kind of Habsburg and post-Habsburg right of residence. And those women dismissed were pertinenti in the mostly Croatian-speaking nearby Sušak or in the surroundings of Fiume, and were commuting to the factory daily. So the Fiumean authority took opportunity to get rid of some workers, and of course the Croatian ones were at the top of the list. It's interesting that pro-Yugoslav sectors tried to take advantage of the wave of bitterness which arose from the discrimination put in place. For example, the workers' organization from Fiume and Sušak turned to the Yugoslav authorities, suggesting that financial support for the dismissed workers could be used for propaganda struggle against Italians. And we can see that several workers in the nearby municipalities did receive some kind of subvention from the Yugoslav government. However, the tobacco workers were far from identifying themselves only on national grounds, but proved to be deeply involved in politics. In October 1919, women obtained the right to vote and to stand for the elections. 3 women were elected in the Fiume City Council. One of them was Antonia Verson, a tobacco worker. We can understand the symbolic importance attached to this professional cohort if we think that out of 56 members of the City Council in an industrial city, the only worker elected was a woman. In April 1920, in a time of workers' unrest, Antonia Verson acted as mediator, handing over to the City Council a request of tobacco workers demanding an increase of salary. Her action failed to prevent a strike, which grew into an anti-D'Annunzio manifestation and was finally repressed with the use of violence. However, tobacco workers soon learned how to stay afloat in this situation, benefit from the fact that the factory was regarded as strategic for the city, and consequently controlled directly by the Italian government even before the annexation of the city. The existing documents tell us a story of political engagement in which different political options were at stake. Among the workers, there were supporters of the Socialist and then the Communist Party, but also supporters of the Autonomist Party, which was advocating the creation of a free state of Fiume, and the Catholic People's Party. However, the Socialist Party became a target for repression at least from the spring of 1920 under D'Annunzio's rule. And the fact that the tobacco workers were not that much burdened by a strongly political background somehow helped them, allowing them more room for maneuver than other workers. And as we will see, they were among the workers who better adapted to the new circumstances. From 1921, tobacco workers started to regard the Italian state as a term of comparison. In fact, they demanded their salaries to be equalized with the ones in Italy. And also, women's suffrage turned them into a significant vote bank, as appeared on the eve of the 1921 elections. I don't have time to get into details of the complex Fiumean history, but you have to take into account that D'Annunzio's rule lasted from September 1919, and he was expelled by the Italian army in January 1921, and after that a constituent assembly was set up. And we can see that on the eve of these elections, the two main parties, the National Bloc and the Autonomist Party, were cajoling them. It's likely that in this situation they felt empowered, which led some workers to engage firsthand. And this was the case of Ermesta Stefancic, a pro-autonomist experienced tobacco worker. She has a really tragic story. She would fall victim of post-World War II reprisal in Fiume. She was probably liquidated by the Yugoslav Security Agency together with her husband, Angelo Adam, and her daughter. However, I have focused on the first part of her political engagement. In 1922, she, as a poorly educated worker, led a delegation of tobacco workers who sought the protection against fascist attacks from the French consulate in Fiume. The strikes that broke out in the factory depict a scenario of widespread political activism in a time when the workers' movement in Fiume had already lost its political way. After the fascist coup d'etat of March 1922 into the tobacco factories, as in other industries, a prominent role started being played by fascist trade unions. High officers of the local fascist party tried to impose themselves as mediators between the workers and the factory management, and to gain decisional power regarding the employment of the workers. And as we can see, in 1923, fascism also visually set a foot in the factory, because we have these pictures hanging on the walls. But so there was political control, but the regime also tried to win over workers' consensus through welfare measures. We are still before the annexation to Italy. But however, a creeping sense of discontent for the working conditions was still present well into early fascism. And tobacco workers organized the last big strike in Fiume in January 1925 to protest against a new tax and to claim the right to negotiate with the management of the factory. And this was especially, the matter of contention, and it was denied by the local political authorities and regarded as a legacy of the past regime that should be eradicated. The strike was eventually led to an end by a lockout, serrata, of the factory, while local members of the fascist party once more imposed themselves as mediators. However, as I could see from the documents, oppositional political activism persisted in the factory at least throughout the 1920s. So I'm drawing toward the conclusions. I would say that despite the internal and political and national divides, tobacco workers apparently continued to be a significant force in the Fiumean labor movement, even in very difficult times, and somehow, to some extent, they succeeded in preserving a kind of unity among the workers. And in my hypothesis, when we deal with the workers' movement in Fiume, we have to take into account the fact that there is a serious lack of documentation, so there was no collection related to the Manifattura Tabacchi, nor in Rome, neither in Rome nor in Rijeka, as much as I know. But my hypothesis, this was due to a combination of factors. The first one was the bargaining power, allowed by the fact that the factory was regarded as strategic, was controlled directly from by the Italian government, and it was performing better than other factories in Fiume. The fact that tobacco workers were not burdened by previous political engagement, and they were consequently less exposed to political repression, and maybe also because they were women. And they were a big number, which meant that from 1919 to 1921, when women in Fiume were allowed to vote, every party wanted their support. And also the fact that got used to negotiate with the political power. Thank you very much.